Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to my channel. The new edition of Age of Sigmar is right around the corner, and if you're a Skaven fan like me, you probably can't wait to get your claws on the new box. Until that happens, I have plenty of older rats to paint up first, so let's grab our brushes and get started. I began by undercoating the models with a gray primer, followed by a zenithal style airbrush spray of white from the top and sides. Alternatively, you could prime the model solid white and get great results too. I began by mixing a custom color for the skin, using an equal parts mix of Darkoath flesh, Stormvermin fur, and contrast medium. If you're painting a whole army with a custom color, I'd recommend mixing an entire bottle so you only have to mix it once. Check out this video here to see how. I painted the mix over all the skin and the fur. Just like any other contrast paint, work on one section at a time and use plenty of paint. Then go back with the brush and soak up any excess paint as needed. Next I painted the fur with Steel Legion Drab. The models are sculpted in a way that in some areas it's not quite clear where the fur starts. On those sections I like to use a larger brush with a blunt tip, and with very little paint on the brush, paint a really thin layer first to blend the edge. Then I'll load up some more paint and put it down a little thicker. I think it'll be easier to show this on my palette, so I'm putting down a thin layer at first here. There's very little paint, so it's semi-transparent. And then the next layer covers a smaller area and makes a blended kind of effect. With the fur all base coated, next I shaded all the skin and the fur with Targor Rageshade. Next I painted the end of the tail with Magos purple. I want to blend the edge of it, and it's really easy to do. Just put down some paint, rinse the brush, dry it on a paper towel, and then use the clean brush to blend out the edge. I want to darken the fur a little, so I shaded it with a thin layer of Basilicanum gray. Most of the cloth will be dark colors, and I want to offset that with something light. I painted something on each model with Skeleton Horde. On this model here I chose the robe. And then for this one I painted the wrap on his weapon. The more variety, the better. I picked out a few dark colors for the rest of the cloth, beginning with an equal parts mix of Sigvald Burgundy and Black Templar. This makes a deep red-violet color that I like a lot. I also painted it inside their mouths, including the teeth. I'll pick those out with an opaque color later, so I'm not worried about it. I painted some of the other cloth with a mix of equal parts Black Templar and Aeldari Emerald. Now is a great time for me to ask you to do those YouTube things that we all love so much. If you're liking the video so far, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. If you really like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel further, consider being a channel member. We have some perks including a Discord server and early access to videos. and I painted the rest of the cloth with 2 layers of Basilicanum gray. I applied the second layer after the first layer dried. Next I shaded all the cloth with a generous coat of Targor Rageshade. I painted all the wood with wildwood. Then I painted any remaining straps and pouches with Black Legion. I also painted the claws, the undersides of the robes, and I added a thin black line in any areas where the armor meets up against the skin. Next I base coated all the chainmail and weapon blades with Iron Hand steel. After the first layer dried, I applied a second for an even finish. Then I shaded the steel with an equal parts mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln oil. I want to add some rust to the metal, and it's really easy to do with some thinned Mournfang brown. I thinned it down with an equal amount of water, and with barely any paint on the brush, I applied some to the steel areas. I think it's easy to overdo rust, and I think it's better to start with a small amount at first. I can always add more later if I want to. Next it's time for the brass, and I base coated those areas with Runelord brass. Just like with the steel, I painted a second layer after the first coat dried. Then I shaded the brass with Darkoath flesh. The brass isn't quite dark enough yet, so after the Darkoath flesh dried, I shaded the brass with a mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln oil. This is a mix I find myself using quite a bit, and I'd recommend mixing an entire pot of it. I'd like to add some oxidation to the brass areas as well, and thinned turquoise paint will do well for that. I thinned it with about an equal amount of water, and with barely any paint on the brush, I painted some around the rivets and in the crevices. The turquoise will look a lot brighter when you first paint it on, and then it will dull down and darken as it dries. Just like with the rust, I think a little bit can go a long way, so start with less at first, and then add more if you want to. Next I painted the claws and teeth with Bonewhite, making sure to leave a thin, dark outline around them. Since these models are for a large army, I don't want to spend more time than I have to, otherwise the army will never get finished. The only highlights I'll be applying will be on the metals, and I'll skip the other areas. I painted a bunch of scratches on the steel areas with Stormhost silver. And then I scratched up the brass as well with Canoptek alloy. I want the eyes to have a green glowing kind of effect, and I began with a small amount of Karandras green. After putting down some paint, I rinsed the brush, dried it on a paper towel, and then used the clean brush to blend out the edge. Once the first layer of green dried, I painted the eye itself with Karandras green to saturate the color a little bit more. Then I painted the center of the eye with a dot of toxic yellow. I want to add some dirt to the bottom of the cloth, so I took an old brush, thinned a dark brown paint with water, wiped off most of the paint with a paper towel, and then made a stippling kind of mark on the cloth. The worse condition the brush is in, the better the effect will be. I used an old brush to apply textured paste to the bases. While the paste was still wet, I sprinkled on some coarse gravel and fine sand. After the bases dried, I painted over them with thinned Rhinox hide, followed by a dry brush of Steel Legion Drab. I painted the rocks with Dawnstone, and shaded them with a mix of Nuln oil and Agrax Earthshade. I painted the edge of the base black, and when that was dry, I applied patches of brown static grass with superglue. I'd like to give a big shout out to our channel members. Thank you so much for your support. It really is a huge help. If you want to be like these amazing people and help support what I'm doing here, just click the join button down below. Thanks. Skaven have to be one of my favorite armies to paint. They have lots of great opportunities for unique colors, grime, weathering, and all the models have so much character. What are your favorite Skaven models? Would you like to see more Skaven on the channel? Drop a comment down below and share your favorites. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting.